Well, evidence is piling up against China with regards to its treatment of Uyghur Muslims in the west of the country, with the US Holocaust Museum releasing a report saying there's now a reasonable basis to believe that previously alleged crimes against humanity against Uyghurs are growing amid a concerted campaign to hide their severity. Now, new findings include forced sterilization, rape, torture and enslavement, with the US government saying the actions of China against Uyghurs amounts to genocide. Let's now bring in Nuri Turkel, who is the Vice Chair of the US Commission on International Religious Freedom and a Senior Fellow at the Hudson Institute. Nuri was actually born in one of these so-called re-education camps in China. Nuri, it's wonderful to see you again. I guess, firstly, none of this comes as any surprise to you, does it? Tell me about your experience in one of these places.
Thank you very much for having me on. For the most of my life, even particularly after coming to the United States, I tried to forget the horrific experiences that the Red Guards, the Chinese Communist Party, put my mother and I through in my childhood years. But it seems to be the past is repeating itself with vengeance. The Chinese government has created this open-air prison type of environment for the Uyghur people who are not in the camp, but based on the US government's estimate, there are about 3 million Uyghurs have been thrown to this modern-day industrial-scale concentration camps that Xi Jinping's China set up to engage in human re-engineering under the guise of re-education through forced labor practices. The news that we've been hearing in the last 3-4 years have been disturbing and deeply concerning, but the international community has not really showed the type of response one would hope after teaching our kids in school and promising ourselves that no one ever, particularly the lesson learned from the Holocaust, that no one will be persecuted, subject to collective punishment based on that individual or that group's ethnicity or religious practices. What is happening in China today and the mean-deering and tepid responses that we have seen from the international community making the never again a kind of a shallow promise.
So tell me, Nuri, what can we really expect in terms of an investigation into what is happening here? It really does seem like the treatment of Uyghurs is worsening, but as you said, it seems as though potentially it is just getting more attention.
Disturbingly, the ongoing genocide in its 5th year. The United States government has shown some leadership in this since late 2019. There have been 94 punitive sanctions have been announced. That includes global Magnitsky sanction, visa ban, and adding entities to the Commerce Department's entity list. So with that, the international community should follow suit. I am very pleased that my own government, both Trump administration and Biden administration, have recognized these atrocities as genocide and crimes against humanity. There's a bipartisan recognition within the US government, and the bipartisan recognition and support within the US Congress. And there are 7 parliaments in liberal democracies have recognized this, but there are muddled understanding of what is happening in China. The international community really has not really waken up to this regime. It shouldn't take a genocide in the Uyghur homeland. It shouldn't take upending of Hong Kong democracy in Hong Kong. It shouldn't take daily threats against Taiwan to realize that what we're dealing is a global threat coming from Beijing. Not only that, the Chinese government, the communist government, with its revisionist project promoting, particularly in the Muslim countries, developing countries, their model, their form of governance, which is authoritarianism, to say the least. So the international community can no longer ignore this or treat this as another human rights crisis. This is on us, those of us in freedom, those of us care about humanity, those of us make that never again a meaningful promise, should do something about it to stop it. And I'd like to highlight something very important. When the United States government recognized this as a genocide, it is just a step into the right direction, the first initial step, because under the Genocide Convention, Article 1, the signatories, as state party to the genocide, must call it out, as the United States and several parliaments did in the world, and also to stop it. And not only stop it and hold those to account, just like the way that the Nazi perpetrators hold to account through Nuremberg trials. So this requires leadership. This requires recognition. A historic parallel between the Holocaust, and this is not a Holocaust, but historic parallel between how the Nazi Germany treated the Jews and other vulnerable groups, and the way that the Xi Jinping's China treating the Uyghurs and others are strikingly similar. Even the way that they're using Olympics, as the way that Hitler did in 1936, we have a Winter Olympics coming up next year. The international community at least recognize that this will be a platform, this will be a stage for a CCP regime to normalize its behavior just the way that Hitler did. And another striking similarity is when the Hitler organizing this Summer Olympics, he already built camps. He already used Jewish women to build those camps. He already engaged in forced sterilization, forced labor. And oftentimes people say history repeats itself, but actually we let history to repeat. As the case of the Uyghurs. So I call on the international community to lend their voice and influence their governments and take a bold action, strategic action. This is a real threat. This is no longer about the Uyghurs. This is about us, humanity, civil liberty, democratic norms, rule of law, human rights.